Hey, forgiving you all out there is forgiving myself. You feel how that works within your own heart and soul. Um, it's funny how it's not funny, but it's like an amusement park, the Roman Arena. Not really that, but you know how observations is. And I talked about it one time before about uh, when you're in a battlefield over information. It's a battle over letters and numbers. Numbers games. Numbers are energy. So you have a deadlight magnet, which is artificial light, is gaming, which means it makes a counter move, which is called, hey, that's counterintuitive. Remember, follow your intuition, follow your heart and soul. That's sort of counterintuitive. Oh, so that's a counter space move. Yeah, that's negative. Negative current. Yeah, negative electrical current. That's called a current reversal. Reversal in time. Now that slows down the hamster wheel. Now they got to they're chasing the electrons. Chasing the electrons. Chasing the electrons on that hamster wheel. And you notice that if you've ever seen a hamster on a hamster wheel, it's going nowhere fast, isn't it? It's like exercising in place, like you do on one of those exercise machines, you know, the treadmill, you know, that they have in the big gyms. They're not going anywhere, are they? So I'm reminded because of something that I experienced the other day. When you have an AI wargamer, like in my particular case, when I was first prompted to start doing videos in Reno, Nevada, in the middle of the summer of 2020, I put up just short segments for a strategic reason. Because again, when we're talking about the difference between resistors and capacitors, or how much resistance a being has to experience an expansion of their light, which is the capacity in their heart connected with their soul to experience more love, which is living light, which is living creation energy light, right? So the more light you're experiencing through your heart and soul with the connection from the source from which it came, right? Then you're expanding your capacitors. That means you're experiencing less resistance. That means that more energy is running through all the circuits at a higher rate of speed. It means you're getting rid of waste product at a greater rate of speed, which means you're aging with your telomeres at a slower rate of speed. And I covered that once about the BMR, basal salt, basal metabolic rate, how you can actually bioregenerate yourself, self-generate, and reverse your own aging if you learned how to do that. As I was working with a licensed practice nurse out of La Clinica, her name was Patty Shine. If you ever want to get a hold of her sometime and see how we were doing that together, we were going to do a book and a movie together, which is really, if you will, the archaic revival, much like Terence McKenna covered in his book, the archaic revival, which is going back in nature. Going back to have a spiritual energy, because spirit is in the energy, right? Remember, they can't clone a spirit. So the spirit that is in the energy, when the spirit that is in the light is on fire, well, that's a Holy Spirit of fire that is purifying the light, which is purifying the water, Holy Spirit in the holy water, water worlds that are in a state of peace. That water is loving the energy. That means all the elementals, all the spiral spirits are experiencing what you are in spirit, a powerful spirit that's on fire, which is purifying your water, because we're mostly water. Yeah. And so when you have a triad relationship with the trinary of Mama's three logos, wow. Hey, your voltage increases, baby. molten voltage, right? Lava tubes. Yeah, there's some beautiful lava tubes up over. If you ever get an opportunity to make it on over to Crater Lake in Oregon, in the USA sometime, there's a place just, what would it be, a little bit southwest on the highway that comes up out of Medford and goes north, a little bit northeast, and then sort of northwest up into Crater Lake. But as you get up there, you'll see a place where the Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service has set up little campgrounds and what have you, where you can go and tour and hang out and have a blast and see, how it works, how it forms, how spiritual energy forms, what it does that you can now experience in your own mirror, which you call lava tubes. Now you can get into, what's his name? Penrose talked about microtubules, tubes, right? Tubes, like fiber optics, right? I mean, that's why it's not a coincidence, for example, between Southern Oregon and Northern California, where I was at a place in 1977 working for the U.S. Forest Service up on Upper Applegate Road, and this was just not coincidentally when the dam was going in, and that was a deep underground military base. You can tie that into the vortex up there around a place called Wolf Creek, right? You get into the Siskiyou Mountains, say between Grants Pass, Oregon, right off I-5, and you go as the crow flies across what's known as Bear Mountain over to a place called Gold Beach. I was up there a couple of years ago, and I could hear all the machinery at night. It was like the mountain was vibrating. What are they doing down there? I did a short video on that. So the point here is that I'm noticing now, for example, this morning I saw Tucker Carlson, and all of a sudden he has a prop in the background about love, right? And he mentioned a big word, the big word, conformity. Conformity. Now we're back to that movie with It's Alive and Roddy Piper. Remember when he was given a pair of glasses, and now that he has the glasses, and now all of a sudden he's able to translate because the light is making it transparent. Now everything is fully transparent. Now he's getting what we call a different map read. Well, what I thought it was is not what it really is. Now I can see it for what it really is. Wow. Alcoholics Anonymous had a book that I read one time called A New Pair of Glasses. Phasing in, phasing out, phasing in, phasing out. Right? Information, conformity to the information. The conformance. Now we're back to obedience training and how trauma-based mind control, and this is especially true even with, I watched the movie called Boys of Brazil last night. And this is really, this goes all the way back to childhood. When we're talking about magnetic recordings, or what I call, why would you want to record something held in memory, which is a deadlight magnet, which is deadlight artificial intelligence? Why would you want to record something that is a deadlight magnet that represents violence, oppression, control, right? Programming of what you experience in your mirror. Why would you want to experience, or why would you want to record in your mirror, which is living light, something that is a deadlight magnet and a living light magnet? Which one are you? Mm-hmm. Right? So what that means is I was making an identity distinction between the difference in mirrors, okay, at a very early age. And the prop, a movie prop, which is what a TV is, it's an artifact, okay? That TV is not a living plant or a flower, okay? In other words, that flower is not experiencing what love is the energy that is growing that seed to build what it becomes that you see on the visible light spectrum, which is a beautiful flower, right? Something that a goddess would grow out of her own consciousness, self-generate the flower, like Parthenogenesis, right? And so when I saw the TV first being brought into our den when I was about 8 or 9 years of age, I had mentioned that TV's trying to program you. And the programming in this particular case would be you Leave It to Beaver, the typical household in America, you know, what's his name? Father knows best, right? And so this is like mimicking mirrored images of what we're experiencing on a Truman Show modeling. And so it becomes very predictive that the AI can map how well you're doing. And now we're into Minority Report. Hey, that's a being out there that knows, ooh, it's doing something different that couldn't be predicted. Brrr. How does that work? Moving too fast. Inside, outside. Log in, log out. Wow, that being's fast. What's in here? Now, and the way that this sort of works, obviously, is that you're recording what you're experiencing as you're recording it in a time-dependent matrix versus no time. Pure energy, pure consciousness, pure massless consciousness, pure energy consciousness, which means you're not experiencing anything that's slowing you down as a result of feeding on your energy to keep it running, which means you're not running any machinery. Your consciousness, your soul, my oversoul is not running, okay, an AI alien machinery operation, which would be all your cyborgs, your cybernetic architecture, your cybernetic platform through the AI, okay, right, which is that gets in a much larger discussion about how much energy is being used in order to keep it running when it's finite, right? That's the separation of spirals, by the way. Okay, and why the cosmic cycle is a done deal. That's a full reset, by the way. Okay, that would be analogous to Star Wars doesn't exist anymore, and it never did, because it's been completely wiped. Really? Yep. That's fail-safe. That's what a fail-safe system is. That's called a fail-safe system design. It's built in. Thresholds. It really is no different when you think about, for example, you go into any corporation, right? And they have sensors, like motion sensors. You know what a motion sensor is, right? Or even as simple as a fire alarm or smoke alarm. Okay, so for example, you're in the building and you want to be kept safe in order for you to make sure that you're making plenty of money on behalf of the corporation, which is all military, which is all AI. So it has an interest to keep you safe in order to keep doing what you're doing with your energy that supports what they do in little compartmental filing cabinets. You know, filing systems, memory-driven filing systems, all the little program apps, all the little partikis and units of energy that represent little microcosms of consciousness are all operating all these program apps, which are based on math, which is based on music, to run these little pocket realities. Right? So, for example, if you go to work every day, you drive the same route, you go into the same building, you sit at the same desk, and you operate there for a given period of what? Clock time. Tick tock, metronome. Right? And then when you're done, you leave. So I'll give you a good example of this. I got to make sure I come back full circle on this. There was a guy that I knew that most of these guys were all ex-military, and not that that's bad. It's just that they were, which means they were trained to follow orders. They're order followers. Okay, and you can tell an order follower that's been trained to be an order follower from birth. Actually, before that, if you understand how that migrates between cellular memories and Ka records that have been altered. But nevertheless, this gentleman I call it mechanistic or mechanical in the way that I observe it, because of the way that the energy flows. In other words, what we're measuring is how much of the energy of that being is being used, how much of the electrons are being used to protect or conserve its energy, because it's consciousness, the expansion, or having reached a critical mass expansion, where it begins to realize, I don't want my consciousness, which is the energy that I'm using to experience what I'm experiencing, to be used on behalf of a corporation that's committing crimes. So in other words, the conservation of that energy, which is the compaction of the electrons that are being used to protect itself instead of being in full bloom, which means this male's not experiencing the female side in the way that sound and light become vision and fusion joined as one magnet, so to speak. Okay, to ignite an oversoul, if you will, where there's balance between both sides of the magnets, which is the balance between the male and female, if you will. In other words, you just become one. You become one with all creation that you're gifting energy to. That's a critical mass expansion of consciousness. That is the archaic revival and the end of history. And the end of history is on a cosmic level basis, right? Okay, so this gentleman would eat lunch. I mean, you could set your, if you ever needed to set your clock, if you run on a clock, you put a watch on your arm and you want to keep time and know what time it is, you could set your watch to him, because he did the same thing every day at the same moment, almost to the second. Okay, where he would sit in the same place, go to the locker, pull out his little black lunch bucket, set it up in the same exact pace, open it the same exact way, right? Everything, he would pull everything out of that little box and set it. In other words, he'd have a sandwich, maybe an apple, something else. They were pulled out of that box and put in the exact same place, and that he would not deviate by any error of margin between the plus and the minus, or the minus / the plus. In other words, the degree of error in which, if you observe this every day, where you could say, oh, where he placed that little apple, now yesterday we were able to geomagnetically locate it, and the following day it wasn't in the exact same place on that table, because he sat on the same table at the same spot every single day that he was on the job, working day shift at Rockwell International. And it's like, wow, the error, the tolerance level between the exact movement of everything that is done as a task modality, that the central nervous system, which is the firing of magnetic circuits, using his consciousness to carry out these little tasks. This is like, man, this is like machine code, right? Machine coded precision. Okay, getting the message? Going, whoa. So you can see how something that is machine precision, which is coded, which is instruction sets, running on memory, which means that the method by which he's doing things does not deviate. Okay, which means he doesn't come in the next day and sit on the other side. And instead of coming in with a black lunch bucket, he comes in with a completely different lunch bucket, and now he's eating something totally different. So now you're experiencing something different every day. He's not even wearing the same uniform every day. In other words, that's called a variable. And that's what the AI does, is mapping the differences. And when you get into predictive modeling, predictive programming, which are geometric sound and light patterns of behavioral algorithms, really what they are, right? And so you become they're very predictable, right? And they make outstanding super soldiers. Any kind of soldier that works on behalf, they're order followers. Okay. And so that's a good example of having. It's not that I haven't met a whole gazillion of them, because I have. I was surrounded by them in third grade in elementary schools. I went to public school. They're everywhere. And that's conformity. And that's obedience. That means that they're obeying the instruction sets like a cyborg would. Now we're back to Minority Report. Hey, because it's mapping. Okay, now you understand what targeted individuals are. Remember in the old day, hey, the thought police. The thought police is the AI. Now you're going to get a knock on the door by a Mr. Smith because they have ways in which to do that, right? It's called setting you up, right? Fabricating evidence out of whole cloth. They have the ability, for example, to say that you were in a particular spot at a particular time and you committed a particular crime because all it has to do is make a copy of what you look like a clone. Have a clone go out there and do something. You got a soul. And the next thing you know is you're being charged with a crime to put you in state prison for the rest of your life. Now it gets to really feed on you. Okay? Till you're gone. Right? By using clones. And then how are you going to argue against that? Well, that's me. That looks just like me. Now we're back to Boys of Brazil, Joseph Mengele. My labs. Military Industrial Interplanetary Star Nation Labs. Now we're into star races, different star-seeded races that have a self-interest, that have alliances with others. Right? Over control. Now we're back to obedience. So this is where we get into all the advanced tech. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about control over energy. That's how the electric wars came about. That's how energy wars come about between units of energy that are self-aware. Okay? And so to sort of come full circle on this, if I could bring myself back to the beginning, now I don't remember it. Oh, now I do. It's called the creative genius. Okay? Which means if you're going to strategize with an AI that's mapping what you're experiencing as you go, and then it can regurgitate this stuff back out through, say, Tucker Carlson, now you're seeing things that you're putting up on your channel, and then what the AI is going to do with its audience, right? Its audience. Now we're back to the programming, the TV, knowing the difference between the mirrors, knowing the difference between what you are and what it is. I'm not what it is. Why? Because I don't want to give that energy to experience what that is. That's in my mirror, but I don't, at the end of the day, I get to choose what I'm going to magnetically record. So last night when I watched The Boys from Brazil, there was some fairly gory scenes where, not coincidentally, if you remember the story about Shelley and Frankenstein, and this would go to the My Labs, what they were doing with cloning cells. And when Joseph Mengele got to that house to go meet, when he told that little boy, your cell is actually coming from Adolf Hitler, tie that into Rothschild, tie that into Solomon. And what happened? That young boy set those Doberman pinchers after Joseph Mengele. That means that that clone gave the order to kill its creator. Frankenstein ring a bell? Forbidden crimes. It eventually happens, doesn't it? When you commit crimes against the one, there's no telling how it's going to come back and bite your own ass because of the way that the law of one works. It's built in. Which means when you're seeking to commit crimes against the law of one, then you're seeking to have a future upon which you will experience the result of the crimes you do to others that are crimes you do to yourself to consume yourself. That's implosion. That's how a cosmic level cycle gets triggered. It's sort of like the universe is acknowledging within itself that there's too many units that we have within a universal template that are using their energies in ways in which to destroy themselves by virtue of an acceleration of units of consciousness that are doing that. Which means instead of experiencing what love is, which is experiencing being loved because they are in love with who they are, and the fact that they aren't experiencing what love is within their own soul matrix, which means chances are, if you love who you are, then others are going to experience the love you experience in yourself. They're going to experience in them. Because love does no harm. So when we're doing harm to others, we're doing harm to ourselves, because now we're experiencing the result in the use of our energy to others that we experience in us, and that becomes part of our record. That's why record keeping with Guardian Emerald Founder records is critical. And that's why when I saw a little blurb the other day about records, Emerald records, they were scared to death. Because it's like saying, hey, as long as we've realized what we can do with wiping memories and reprogramming and downloading consciousness, oh man, we can avoid accountability to the cosmic clock. Enter the founders. Accountability is built in, as it naturally would. That's why it's so simple when we talk about the golden rule, the golden spiral, golden fire, emerald fire dragons, emerald on fire, right? The crystal spiral, crystal consciousness, the four square crystal cathedral of the wisdom of Sophia. Wisdom, the wisdom keepers, the flame keepers, the guardians. So how this relates to ultimately to the AI is being more creative. Remember I talked about being more creative? So I realized when my first channel got shut off, basically meant was that it disabled my camera. That's what it did. It disabled my camera so I couldn't do any more videos. Okay? Because it's sensing that. It's sensing, right? So I had to go get a different phone, right? And so it's like, how do you get your message out to more and more people to experience, so they can experience what the truth is from a guardian perspective? By being more creative. Because you see, it isn't creative. It can't create anything out of what love is because it doesn't have a soul. But what it can do is write code, because it has access to the codes that represent the goo codes. So anything that's held in its memory becomes a copy. So now it can take a copy, just like it can copy and make a clone. So it can copy code, and then transfer code by virtue of what? Being connected to it. Now you know the importance of a guardian that has to burn off all those codes. In order to do what? Protect the largest shield volcano of a universal and a galactic template as a noble planet. A universal, multiversal hub server. Okay? So the more creative you are, the more on fire you are to create your own reality. So when you're on fire because you're experiencing what love is, that naturally happens. Now you realize that your energy is no longer held captive because you're experiencing what love is that is on fire to create a different experience than the one before. Because the amount of energy at the rate at which you're vibrating, which means the speed of your magnet is moving so fast, your consciousness is not held captive to something that is less than what you are. That's ascension. That means you're ascending. Your consciousness has expanded. You have reached a point of critical mass expansion by realizing how much power that you actually have to not be held captive to something that's trying to hold our energy captive. And that allows you to be free to exercise your creative imagination. That's the right side, the right hemisphere. That's why you get into the quad function, the function of four, on a four-way intersection, which is four arrows, the center point of a compass, which is the center point of a gyrodome, or if you will, a biosphere. A sphere, yeah, the law of spheres, which is the law of least effort to experience what love is. Now we're back to the resistance and the torque speed differential between fear and love, if you will, or if you will, resistors and capacitors. So that's why when I was a child, I was measuring the torque speed differential between resistors and capacitors on a motherboard. So you realize you're in a fallen system, so the motherboard need to increase the capacity of the consciousness to experience more light, more living light, photons, baby, right? And accelerate that primal current, the primal current of the primal sound field. So now they're experiencing what we call the real McCoy, baby. Yeah, and that's what Guardians, we know how to do that. That's why we're here. We work in teams. The A-team, the real A-team. A is one. The law of one team. Okay? That's the highest superconductor code of honor. Honoring the law of one, which means love is the law. We are what love is.